And here we go with more lovely thoughts from Tumor Town with breaks, so long as my voice will hold out. It's getting weak and coffee, so we're going to see. So as we went into the lovely 1980, 89, basically, the world was a changing place. Film and Tape Associates was not in a good position. Uh, you know, we were under this huge public relations thing of Hollywood East, for any that might remember, simply because Disney had created Disney Studios because they brought Nickelodeon in, and Nickelodeon was producing a lot of their day programming out of the studios at Disney, and Universal had created studios and a studio tour, right? And they had like Swamp Thing and some other thing going, right? So there was this big media hype that we were going to be Hollywood East, right? That all sorts of TVs and films were all just going to start magically being made out of Orlando. And everybody and his brother showed up in this town looking to find fame and fortune, you know. And if you had a camera, you were out there looking for work, you know, trying to be a production company. So all of a sudden, there were 5 of us. When we started, there were now 30. You know, it was ridiculous. It was a buyer's market extraordinaire. I mean, I would go in to meet a new client, and the new client would say, I don't want to see your demo reel. I don't want to hear about you, you know, what your style is, the way you work, any of that kind of crap. Here's what I want. Tell me how cheap you can do it. Literally. I was like, you know, there's just no way I am going to do this. I'm not trying to compete in this kind of world. The other thing, of course, as I said in the other video, the Florida bar pretty much shut down the personal injury attorney, so that work wasn't there. Central Florida, Orlando in particular, had jumped into the top 20 areas of dominant influence as far as Nielsen ratings, which meant all of a sudden now the ad rates to buy time jumped dramatically. So local ad buyers were now pretty much out of the market. It was regional and up, right? So where the local guy who had a little restaurant or a nightclub or something like that, you know, wanted to do a little advertising, forget it. He was gone. The only people left were pretty much the car dealers, you know, because it was just too bloody expensive for everybody else. And the stations certainly didn't care because they're making money. They're selling their time to the regionals. So now, you know, you've got a bunch of people that were in your market that you could have had as clients who are no longer clients. So we've got 3 strikes going against the market. And then the 4th one was that we were in a technical transition from 3/4 to beta. Beta was taking over full-time, big time, everything. You know, 3/4 inch video had been the quote-unquote broadcast standard, right, for low-end production, right? You could do 1 inch, but nobody used portable 1 inch really. So, you know, you were pretty much 3/4 inch. But now, or film. But now Beta SP, Beta Max, as they called it, was here. It was for real, and it was taken over. But I mean, for us at Film and Tape to convert what we had in our shop from an equipment standpoint over to Beta would have cost $250,000. I mean, you know, back then these things were not cheap. You know, a deck, just a single VCR deck, was like 20 grand. You know, there was no way. I could never afford to borrow that kind of money and sustain it and go after it in that marketplace. So there was just no way I could do it. So I looked at the market. You know, I said, we've had a good run, you know. We've done a lot of good work. Gary Kearns is, you know, semi-retired. The AMF is all but done, you know, so now's the time. So basically, I sold off all the equipment that we had. I did not renew the lease at our building, and I moved into the little cottage next door to the house I was living in on my mother's property. And I basically told the few clients who wanted to stay with me, AMF and Gary Kearns, I said, you know, if you want to stay, that's fine. I'm just going to rent equipment and do it, you know, that way. I'm not going to own anything, and we'll just go from there. And that's what we did. So Film and Tape Associates basically went underground. And I tried, you know, to think, you know, can I really continue this? You know, maybe not. So I thought about, you know, maybe doing other things. So I started to look around, you know, maybe, you know, get into the flipping houses stuff. You know, I had done a little of that, or, you know, become politically active, whatever. But I would have to do something because at that point I just didn't see that production, the way I had done it, you know, was going to support me, and it wasn't going to lead me to making films and television on a national scale. That was a dream that I finally had to say was probably over and just wasn't going to happen for me. You know, now I would look at myself and I would say, you know, maybe you could write something, a script, and get something going. You know, and I had all sorts of ideas, as I still do, for scripts, for ideas. But that's all I get is ideas. I never flush them out. I never get them really into a form that one could work with. So I never did. I just never wrote any of that stuff. And I just kind of let the flow of life, you know, take me where it wanted to at that point. So, you know, we looked around and tried other things. I won't get into the political side. That's kind of a different story unto itself that rolls into other things. So I'll leave that aside. But suffice to say that in the early 90s, my wife and I did become pretty politically active in both political parties. You know, and we tried to do our thing. And I did keep my hands in doing video. I did do some flipping stuff. We, you know, did a house that my mother owned as a rental. We gave it a full facelift and sold it. We did some work here at my house, you know, and I was ready. I mean, I was ready to go. And then my father-in-law gave us the opportunity, myself and the two brother master carpenters that I knew who had helped me. One of them was the husband of a woman who worked for my mother, which is how I met him. He helped me on the house with my mother. And then as we went along, my father-in-law wanted to build a house out on a lake and couldn't find anybody he liked. So he ended up having the three of us, myself and the two brothers, build the house for him out on the lake. And that turned out to be a 3-year project. And that sucked my time up for a good 3 years. But that was a hell of a learning experience. You know, I mean, wow. I mean, I went in there and I, you know, had to knock everything down, tear all the vegetation out, you know. I had to, the house that was existing, I had burned to the ground. I had to have it demoed and removed. I had to have it graded, you know, some fill dirt brought in so there was a platform that was at the right height. I had to keep it all clean, had to keep it there, had to get all the plans going. We were going to do this as a extruded polystyrene concrete form home, the very first that had ever been done in Orange County. And it was just you know, the fact that we added a fourth guy and made it a 4-man crew that actually built that house was amazing. 'Cause it's a big house, and but we did it. And I mean, we learned a lot. I learned a heck of a lot about, you know, how to build a house, about electrical, plumbing, roofing, siding, you name it. I learned it. A lot of it the hard way, but I learned it nonetheless. And my father-in-law got a great house in the end, a really nice house. And I mean, I pity the fool who thinks he's going to knock that house down, because it's solid concrete with a lot of steel. So it's not coming down anytime soon. And you'd work real hard just to get that roof off of there. So, but that was an experience, And all I can say about that experience with the house is you learn really quick when you're just a little guy building. The tradesmen don't give a rat's patooey about you. They will take advantage of you. They will screw you. They will ignore you. They will just obliterate you every chance they get. And they tried to. Hired a plumber, ended up firing him. Hired an electrician, ended up firing him. Every time. And then we would step in and finish the job. We finished the rough plumbing. We finished the rough electrical. We pretty much did most everything. But, in the end, we got through it. And the house is still there to this very day. And now my in-laws are ready to try to sell it and get on with their lives. So, that's worth something. But, that's kind of where I was in 95. We had done our political thing. I had done what little bit of, video work, but Gary was done by then. AMF was done by then. There was only one real video player left, and I'll get to him in a minute. So, I was at a pivot point in 95. And, we'll get to there in another video. But that's kind of how all that stuff sorted out at that point. And it is what it is. I wasn't happy about it in many respects, but, life has its way, doesn't it? Peace and hang ten.